All right. Let's um let's start on our backs. Just finding your way onto your spine, allowing your body to feel really held and supported. And then just settling into a breath that allows you to feel held and supported. And we'll give ourselves just about 60 more seconds here. Feeling your way into that nice center space. And when it feels appropriate, we'll bring our knees into a bent position if they're not already there. Let them fall to one side or the other, whatever side feels best and appropriate. And then we'll inhale the knees back to neutral and let them fall over to the second side. And then we'll press ourselves up through seat and into tabletop. Set your tabletop so that you feel really neutral in the spine. And then we'll immediately break that with an exhale, rounding the back, tucking the chin, tucking the tailbone. And then inhaling, lifting the tailbone, lifting the chin, dropping the belly. And reversing into the exhale side. Spine arches. And reversing into the inhale side. Belly drops. And we'll just move back and forth here in this spinal articulation, trying to play with the full flexibility of the spine, trying to bring some vibrancy back to that spinal column and all of the central nervous system, right? Protected by the spinal column. That's why the movement of the spine is so impactful. One more time in each direction, and then eventually, with no rush to get there, we'll come back to hands and knees tabletop, flip the tops of the feet, and sink your way back into child's pose. Child's pose here is not really about refreshing the body, right? We're so early into practice. It's about landing, allowing for that spinal movement to settle in. Think about the depth. Think about where you feel restriction. And we'll just give ourselves about 25 more seconds, just feeling into the body here in child's pose. And then from the full depth of your child's pose, we'll start to add a little tailbone sway. So just a little movement laterally. And then we'll start, fingers lift in front of us or connect in front of us if they're not already. And we'll start to use the fingers to just start to pull ourselves back towards tabletop with this lateral sway happening the whole way. So that eventually you make it to a tabletop and you have some nice lateral movement. And then we'll bring our tailbone back into a neutral alignment, curl our toes, and roll our way back into down dog. Really elevate the hips and energize that down dog. Think about using it to help space out the spine itself. And then we'll walk our way forward into fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. And let's roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae. Eventually making our way into this mountain pose, letting your feet come to that 2-fist distance, thinking about that neutral alignment, letting the eyes close if it's comfortable for you within the practice. And just feeling in to the rhythm of your breath, the cycles of your breath. Eventually, we'll let the eyes blink open, receive light, kind of reorient, and then let your left foot slide straight back into lunge. Think about the positioning of that back heel. We really want that to be driven straight up. And then ground your left heel and roll open into 2. Keep that lateral edge active on the front leg. Think about expanding out. And then we'll spin that left heel up, come back into crescent. Drop the hands to heart center and return to your mountain pose. Adjust your feet so that you are once again balanced. And then we'll slide that right foot straight back. Thinking about that heel and the strength of that back leg kind of as our primary focus. And then right heel grounds, and we blossom open into that too, with that big width and that big lateral awareness in the legs. And then our right heel spins up and we are in crescent. Hands drop to heart center and we will return to the front of the mat. Big breath in. Settle the weight distribution. Think about the foot alignment as kind of your primary emphasis. And then hips are headed back into chair. big, flat, neutral spine. Rise back up and sweep the arms up and overhead. And then let's interlace the fingers here. So get that grip. Index fingers can extend, but they don't necessarily need to. And we're just going to keep the torso engaged and let the arms slide behind you. So trying to take out this desire for hips forward, but arms rolling back, shoulders expanding, and then we'll release into fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Plant your hands. We'll walk our way back into down dog. Energizing across that finger mount, getting that big elevation, crafting that space. Take the index finger prints and index finger mounds and give a little extra energy there, maybe like 15% extra energy. And then try to keep that index finger energy as you come down to hands and knees, and then keep the index fingers anchored as you slide back into child's pose. So we're kind of again looking at adding shoulder range, that big overhead reach, and now this anchored hand placement where we can pull back into that shoulder space using our body weight. And we'll give ourselves just 20 more seconds here. And then we'll start that delicate lateral sway in the back of our child's pose. So just moving the hips here. And then we'll start to rock our way forward. Fingers engaged, helping to pull. See if you can feel that shoulder musculature as you activate and eventually make your way back into neutral. And then let's take the feet out to the width of the mat. Actually, feet and knees. So we take the stance of the legs out to the width of the mat. And then think about index finger, middle finger, ring finger as really being active here. And really anchor down in those prints. Toes curl, wider version of down dog. Really easy for all the weight to come into the heels of the hands here. Push forward into that front hand structure, front, I guess, in this case, and really try to get as light as you can in the heels of the hands so that we can get more of that shoulder activation into the shape. And then let's walk our way forward. We'll find our way into fold. Inhale into half lift. And exhale back into fold. Full settle here. Full release here. Drift your awareness to your sacrum. We'll roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae. Coming all the way back into mountain. Bring your hands together at heart center. Feet coming back to a traditional width as well. And from that traditional width, hips back, sinking into chair, keeping the spine nice and neutral. See what it feels like to rock forward onto the toe bound balance. Really have that little play with stability. And then heels come back down. We'll rise up. Interlace the fingers overhead. This time we are going to allow for the hips to come forward. So index fingers might be helpful, but not necessary. And the hips are going to go forward. Shoulders are going to go back. We just start to get that little bit of arching sensation. Really thinking about how we can bow here. And then we'll bring ourselves back. Take the arms out to cactus. And pretty, I don't know if likely is the right word. We're pretty possible that the arms feel exceptionally heavy here. Take the fingers up towards the ceiling and then turn the palms out. Let's see if I can make that look right. Like you're trying to hold plates, right? There we go. And we're gonna sink back in a chair. And then squeeze those elbows back and really feel into that shoulder space. And then we will bring our elbows and palms together and rise back up. Feel the blood flow on that posterior chain around the shoulder girdle. Sweep the arms up and overhead. Exhale through forward fold. Inhale into half lift. And exhale back into fold. Plant your hands. We'll walk into plank. Now, this is going to be one of the more challenging planks we've been in with all that shoulder fatigue. Slowly, gently, delicately lowering ourselves to our belly. We're going to recoup the shoulders first. So hands slide underneath the forehead, little crocodile pose. And really think about shoulder recoup here. So there's this very prominent scholar in this little city. And he's always a cutting edge in everything. And the way he stays cutting edge is he accumulates information, not unlike many of us might do. He is constantly seeking out, actively searching for new information, whether it be scholarly articles or news articles, or even town gossip. He cannot possibly ever be fulfilled in that search for information. Okay, from here, we're going to slide our hands underneath our shoulders. And so out from underneath the forehead, underneath the shoulders, spread the fingers out really wide. Really think about activating that, and then come up onto the fingertips like spider fingers. And flex the quads. Make sure you're protected in your low back. So glutes are active, core is active. Lift the torso and have your gaze straight down. Now, the torso lift the torso might be wrong. Lift the forehead and see if it feels appropriate to get to the point where the torso starts to lift. That would have been a much better way to describe that. So if you want to reset and find your way back into a level of comfort, do. We're going to hold. There's some shoulder activation here, right? So shoulder activation, we're holding here. The quads are flexed. We're capable of breathing. And then we'll relax. Keep our nose as low to the mat as possible, and we're going to slide back into child's pose. And as you land in child's pose, pay attention to that lumbar musculature. How is the low back musculature responding this cycle through? I think this is the third time we've been in child's pose. A very different entry. That horizontal entry is one of my favorite things. It can be a little hard to get back. So squeeze the glutes, get yourself all the way back into the depth of the shape. And we'll give ourselves just 15 more seconds here. And when it feels appropriate, we're going to pull ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop. From hands and knees tabletop, curl your toes, lift your seat, find your way back in a down dog. And then we'll walk our way forward into fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Drift your awareness to your sacrum, and let's roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae. Bring your hands to heart center, and then right foot's gonna slide straight back into lunge. Make sure you land with that heel vertical to strengthen the leg. Right heel grounds. Hands are gonna come diamond shape to the sacrum. So we have that connection point at the thumb and the index finger. Squeeze the shoulders open, squeeze the elbows open, and just sink into that full depth. And then blossom out into warrior two. Feel the lift of the shoulder as you do so. So you get that humeral head level. And then we'll drop right back in to that diamond shape. Hold the diamond shape as you spin the right heel up and come into this modified version of crescent, and then sweep the arms up. And then we'll drop the hands right back behind us once again. Squeeze those shoulders back, get those elbows back, fully approximating this shape. Really think about that depth. And then we'll use some momentum or some strength to step our right foot forward and release the hands to heart center. Let the shoulders breathe here. Just crafting some fluidity and breath and getting blood flow back into the shoulders. You don't have shoulder tightness. Congrats. Heck yeah. Good job. And you may not feel any restrictiveness, but if you do have shoulder tightness, if you're one of the many, many humans on the planet with shoulder tightness, that little bit of movement can really feel like it's restricting a ton of blood flow because we're using that sheath of musculature, and that is happening. So when you're re-normalized, let's slide our left foot straight back. Left foot lands, left heel points straight up, then left heel grounds. We find warrior two. We think about this big open shape. The hands are going to slide behind us. We draft back to the shoulders. We get those elbows wide. We're thinking about that width. And then we blossom out into two. Shoulders come out to that parallel extension. And then we release back, thumbs and index fingers squeezing back into that space, crafting that strength. And then the left heel spins up and we rotate into crescent, sweeping the arms up to fully express crescent, and then dropping your hands right back and behind you, crafting that big width in the elbows. And then we'll step forward. And as you step forward, sweep the arms back to heart center and sink the seat back into chair. Hips back, not knees forward. And then just fall into your forward fold. You can release the hands here. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Plant your hands. Walk back into down dog. Drive and lengthen into down dog. Craft that width of your shape. Think about from handprint to tailbone. Length of the shape is probably a better way to describe that, just based upon our mat alignment. And then we'll come down to hands and knees tabletop. Flip the tops of the feet and sink back into child's pose. Child's pose again, little opportunity for the shoulders to recover just a little bit more deeply. There are times in this scholar's life when the level of news, of information coming at him feels like it's coming from a fire hose, like it's too much to take on. Although they happen rarely, they do happen from time to time. And he's learned that it's best in those moments, instead of trying to absorb everything as it's happening, to slow things down. He likes to go on a walk, take a break, and then he can come back and he can reabsorb or refocus on absorbing information.
kind of at his own capacity. So on this particular day, he's gone on a pretty significant walk. He's way beyond the city limits. He's out in this rural countryside, comes across this little farm, small little piece of land, and there's this woman out, and she's tending to the fields, and she's pulling weeds. And he just looks at her with just such pity, and he just thinks, what a mundane, monotonous task this woman is stuck with. And he watches her for a little while, and then he carries on and eventually makes his way home. Last 20 seconds here. Add that little lateral sway with your tailbone. And we'll use that to make our way eventually up into tabletop. And from tabletop, we'll realign our spine, curl our toes, lift our seat, and find our way back into down dog. Getting all the way back into that down dog space. And then let's walk our way forward into fold. From your fold, we'll inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Release completely here. Grab opposite elbows and once again, rock a little side to side. This time we have a little bit different anchor, right? The hips are more of an anchor space here and the torso swaying, and opposite of what we've been doing in that child's pose re-expansion. Maybe one more time to each side. And then we'll release the hands back down to the mat, roll or sweep our way up into mountain. Bring your hands together at heart center. And relax here. Think about the stability on the left and right side of your body and maintaining that. And then let's slide your left foot straight back into lunge. We're going to take our arms overhead into crescent. And then with your right hand, grab your left elbow. With your left hand, grab your right elbow. If the elbows don't feel good, grab wrist or fingers. But just something on the opposite side. And then really, really anchoring yourself down. We're going to lean over towards the right. So using this front leg for some stability here. And then come back to neutral. And now this is a much harder lean. So think about your stability. We're headed over towards the left. And come back to neutral. Drop the hands to heart center and step to the front of the mat. Take a round or two of breath where you re-center. And then when it feels appropriate, we'll head over to side two. Right foot slides straight back. Sweep the arms up. Find your crescent. Left hand to right elbow, right hand to left elbow, or wrist or fingers, whatever feels appropriate. This time we're headed towards the left first. So think about using that front leg for stability. Bowing out and breathing in these shapes. And then we'll come back to neutral. The harder way, we're headed over towards the right. Stay balanced and get that big lateral space. Coming back to neutral, dropping the hands to heart center. And returning to the front of the mat. Breathe in. Think about squeezing the glutes so that you can push the torso up. Try to really elevate the torso into that space we've created so that we get that lateral space back in our body. Sweep the arms up and overhead. And then try to keep that little glute lift, try to keep that little torso lift, and let's come through fold. Inhaling into half lift. Exhaling back into fold. Plant your hands. We'll walk back into down dog. Get that depth in down dog. Really drive that length into down dog. Down to hands and knees, tabletop. Flip the tops of the feet and sink back into child's pose. And now I think this is going to be the last version of child's pose we get into. So if there's any tweaks or adjustments that can make an impact for you, make them this cycle through. Give ourselves 20 more seconds here. When it feels appropriate, let's start that little tailbone sway and we'll work our way up into a tabletop. From your tabletop, we'll extend our legs out in front of us for staff. From staff, we're just going to work forward into a fold. We're going to give ourselves 120 seconds here, 2 minutes of fold. Long time to be in fold sometimes, but a good time to be in fold. Try to take that shoulder space and lateral edge space and transition it into your ability to move forward into your fold here. Last 15 seconds here. And as it feels appropriate, back to a vertical spine and then Releasing onto your really allowing your body to receive what you've done. Thus far, we took some pretty unique approaches at expansion tonight. So it's possible that you're feeling some different sensations, some unique sensations here. So just give yourself another 60 seconds just to feel in here. And then when it feels appropriate, let's extend our legs down the mat if they're not already. And then push into your heels and just maybe bending the knees might be helpful here, but we're going to move our hips 1 inch to the right. So just a little inch over to the right. And then we're going to walk our feet over to the left corner of our mat. And then arms reach straight up overhead like you're trying to reach towards the wall behind you. And then we'll interlace the fingers. Index fingers do point away from us, and we'll let the arms move over towards the left corner of our mat as well. So hips are just 1 inch to the right. Feet are over at the left corner. Arms are pointing over towards that left corner. And so body making a little crescent shape here. We'll give ourselves just 20 more seconds on this first side. Try to breathe into that right rib cage. And then we'll relax back to neutral. Bend both knees, kneecaps point towards the ceiling. Let the bottoms of the feet come together and the knees fall out wide. Think about adjusting the torso so that it feels balanced. So we did warm up with some of those standing lunge bends, right? And so you may not feel super out of sync, but if you do, just make sure you adjust until you come back to feeling balanced. And so for whatever reason, the next day, this scholar feels drawn to follow on the same walk. He heads out of the city limits and he heads out into the rural space, and he once again sees the same farmer in her field pulling weeds. And he's starting to pity her, but he pays a little bit closer attention this time, and he sees that she is doing this task that he thinks is so
trivial and mundane. She's doing it with this huge smile. And so, as a collector of information, he's intrigued. He wants to know what is driving her happiness. Last 10 seconds here. And we'll bring our knees back to neutral. Extend the legs down the mat or move the hips first, your choice. We're going to move the hips 1 inch to the left. And then we're going to walk our feet over to the left corner of the mat. Extend the arms straight overhead towards the wall behind you or the space behind you. Index fingers extending as the hands come together, interlacing those remaining fingers. And then we will lean over towards that right corner with our hands. Feet at the right corner, bottom right corner, arms reaching towards that top right corner or beyond. Hips just an inch over to the left. And you're finding your breath into the left side of the rib cage, really focusing on driving your breath here, expanding your ribs with your breath. Last 15 seconds here. And we'll relax our way back to neutral. Bend those knees, bring the hips back in line, let the bottoms of the feet come together and the knees fall out wide. Once again, make sure that you are integrated in the spine. Arms can be wherever feels most comfortable here. Breath is fluid and easy. We'll give ourselves about 20 more seconds here. When you're right, when you're ready, knees come back together. And then add some dynamic sway here. Let the knees explore your body's capacity for rotation. Really thinking about moving when it's beneficial and pausing when it's beneficial and fully exploring what is best for you here. And then eventually we'll let the knees fall over to the left.
So he goes down and he calls out to this farmer, and she comes over and he says, what is keeping you so happy while you're doing this weeding task? She says, oh, my garden's a sacred space. I'm very deliberate in what I allow to grow here, and I'm very deliberate in what I don't allow. And he's like, that's not the answer I expected from you. She says, you should try weeding. It's a great way to clear your mind. And you're like, okay. Comes across the fence. And he spends the rest of the afternoon pulling weeds with this woman. They don't share a lot of conversation, but what they do share is pleasant and simple. At the end of the day, they're both very dirty, sweaty, hot, maybe a tad dehydrated, but they both have huge smiles on their face. And they're looking out over this field, and it looks absolutely immaculate. Every row is perfect. There's not a weed. It's just beautiful. Last 10 seconds here on this first side. And when it feels appropriate, you bring your knees back to neutral. Kneecaps point towards the ceiling. And then let the knees fall over to the second side. Settling into that twist side too. Adjusting so that the shape maximizes the benefit for you. And so he turns to her and he says, wow, this place looks amazing. And I feel so good. I feel so happy. I feel so light. And she says, see, I told you. She says, I was thinking about it as we were pulling those weeds. And I really think, I'm not sure it's about what you allow in and what you don't allow in. I really think it's about translating the hard work into something tangible and beautiful. And she says, oh, so you think it's the hard work, huh? And he says, I really do. I really think it's the hard work. And she goes over to the edge of the field. She picks up this little dumpster of trash, little trash bin. She comes back to the middle of the field. She's like 15 feet in front of him. And she just pours out this trash bin right in front of him. And she says, now what do you see when you look out at this field? She says, well, I see a big pile of trash. And she says, well, it's not the beautiful field anymore. And he's like, well, it's kind of ruined by the trash. And she says, well, the hard work's still there, isn't it? When you're ready, you'll bring your knees back to neutral. And he kind of chuckles and he says, okay, yeah, the hard work is still there. You're right. Letting your awareness drift within, asking yourself if there's anything you might want, need, benefit from prior to Shavasana. And if there is, offering that to yourself now. If you have everything you need, if you're ready for some stillness, then let's drift into a shape where we can fully appreciate some stillness. kind of laugh. She says, I'm telling you, it's not the work. It's the protection of a sacred space. The ability to choose what you let in and what you don't. That makes all the difference. We'll start to bring some movement to our fingers and our toes. To our wrists and our ankles. Elbows and knees. Shoulders and hips. Neck, head, jaw. Eyes, tongue. Eventually, the entirety of the body moves. And we utilize that movement to transition from the shapes we are in, finding our way back into a seat. In the seated space, spine gets tall, breath gets fluid, eyes close. And with your next inhale, we'll bring our hands together, heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you remind yourself that your brain is designed to accumulate? And ask yourself if you're treating it like a sacred space, or if you're allowing it to be society's garbage bin, and see how that impacts your experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this evening's practice and for being you. Namaste. Happy Monday, guys. Appreciate the heck out of you being here. Have a beautiful rest of your week. I'll be back on Sunday to recharge and we'll do this thing again next Monday. Love the heck out of you. Wow.